Well, welcome back, everybody. Another VMworld that we're just getting kicked off here. So as we've done for now, I think 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. I don't even know how many years I've been doing this now. We're kicking off another round of vExpert Daily. So we got a few guys that have been around the block like once. They're all so young that they've
I don't know how to take that.
Around the storage block.
Around the storage block.
Thank you for using it for pumping my blog there.
There you go, around the storage block, just for you.
Oh, okay.
So really, we'll get it kicked off for some quick intros. First off, for those who don't know me, I'm Mike Letchin, at mletchin on the Twitter sphere. And we'll just kind of go from there. So Julian, why don't you give a quick intro?
Hi everybody, I'm Julian Wood. I'm Julian_Wood on the Twitters. From a VMware point of view, I'm a customer. Work as a solutions architect, independent solutions architect, and I work at a bank at the moment.
Okay.
I'm Calvin Zito. I'm Calvin Zito on Twitter. Very, very unique.
Very difficult one. Much like mine, hard to figure out.
Took me a while to come up with that. I'm a blogger at HPE. My blog is at, it's called Around the Storage Block.
That's
so
convenient.
Again, it's, the blog URL is hpe.com/storage/blog.
And I'm Shane Williford at CoolSport on Twitter. I guest blog every now and again. VMware, part of things. I'm also a customer, senior systems engineer in the Kansas City area.
Okay, well, great, guys. Thanks for joining me. Obviously, it's always nice to catch up with everybody. You get now onto our second day-ish with a little bit kicking off yesterday, everybody coming in on Sunday night. So let's start with last night, actually. I mean, the Solution Exchange opens. Any first thoughts on the floor, things that seem a little different this year, things that caught your attention?
It's vast. I was surprised. I sort of had heard some things that the Solutions Exchange was going to be a little smaller compared to Moscone last year, but it's vast. I mean, and the number of companies, small, large, the number of companies I had never even heard of is amazing. So yeah, it shows that the ecosystem is alive and well, I suppose.
I mean, those are the ones I like to see when I come in RA, are the ones I don't know.
Yeah.
I spend more time, I think, on the outskirts and there's little 10 by 10s
Absolutely.
around the edge. I know the companies that have 30 by 30 booths by now. And if you don't know them, you haven't been paying attention.
Yeah.
Anything else? Did you see anything? Did you get to walk around at all?
I actually didn't. That was just by choice because yesterday was a pretty intense physical active day, so
Yeah.
I didn't walk the floor yesterday. What I'm interested in seeing is, let's face it, VMworld is almost like a storage event.
Yeah, it is a storage event to this point.
I know last year I walked around the show floor and I think I counted there were 34 startups that were in some form of startup. And so to me it's going to be interesting to see how many are there this year.
How many of those 34
How many of
are
them are
actually
still
still
around?
here?
Yeah, because I think there is a tech reckoning that's coming here.
And a few have definitely got gobbled up over the years.
Yeah.
I actually haven't heard of anything new and gotchas or anything exciting. I mean, I think I'm generally new about.
You guys are killing me. Did nobody walk past Primary Data's booth?
I must have. I walked past all the booths, but
They have an obstacle course over a foam pit.
oh yeah, I saw that. that actually looked so cool.
Like, that's their entire booth. Supposedly it shouldn't be this hard, so we're just going to have an obstacle course instead of doing a booth.
I know from like an aesthetic standpoint, you're talking about like the size. I guess it's probably the same size as far as vendors and everything, but aesthetically speaking, yeah, it's like a maze. You can't like go from one end to the other. You
There
have to
aren't
like
straight aisles this year.
it's kind of odd, but anyway,
And
one thing I did notice.
I heard somebody say that they thought there were only 12,000 people here. And somebody at the party last night, it's like, are you smoking something? I mean, there's no way there's going to only be 12,000 people in VMworld.
I think the numbers this year are going to be interesting.
They said 23 on the stage. Whether that's an accurate
I
count
feel
at
like
this point.
every year they add 1,000 to make it
Yeah.
the biggest one. I feel like every year.
Yeah,
So
it's a vanity metric that means nothing.
I mean,
Absolutely
realistically,
nothing.
I think we probably have a little more than last year. I've heard multiple people were like, "Oh, I haven't been to it since last time it was in Vegas."
Yeah, well, it's Vegas. People are going to
Some
come
people
because
come
it's Vegas.
just because it's in Vegas.
And it's cheaper.
And some people don't come because it's in Vegas. I mean, I
Yeah.
know a VMware SA that's in Colorado that said his customers can't come because they're government customers.
Yeah, a lot of the
and
Fed guys can't come.
They won't come to a Vegas event.
Yeah, well,
Well, government customers can't come to events just because it's in Vegas.
I don't know if it's a federal regulation,
it's
but a lot
agency
of governments in general, whether it's state, local, Fed, they have a problem with sending their employees to Vegas. Now, of course, having an event somewhere in South America with, never mind, we won't go there.
Exactly.
Well, being that I work for a local government, albeit a school district local government. I'm here, so
Yeah, I
it
think
must be state or federal.
Well,
but
it's by it's
dependent
a
on-
I think it's by agency, by if their boss,
It's
if
a-
they had an issue and
Yeah.
somebody in legal said, no, you're not doing that anymore.
Right.
I mean, I think other people do come. You mentioned it's cheaper though, but from what I've heard from the vendor standpoint, from the partners here, it's actually more expensive in San Francisco for a lot because they already have so much staff, and like travel and expense are less at that point.
Yeah, but I think from customers, just how you know, hotel rooms and the amount of choice
Oh, yeah.
and that kind of thing, it's definitely cheaper for
I
customers
mean,
to attend.
you get a better workout while you're here because it's going to be like a 6-mile walk no
Yeah.
matter where you're going.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm at Excalibur and paid $44 a night. So in Vegas it was like cheap if you can get a $400 night room. So
You do have to stay at Excalibur for that.
that's
though.
right. I am at Excalibur for.
I think you're,
Me too.
we were discussing that. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're at Luxor. Oh, that's horrible." Like, or you're at Excalibur. And then we're talking about, we're like, "Have you ever met anyone who actually stayed in one of them, though?" And most people are like, "Oh, no, I've just heard it's bad."
Yeah, exactly. It's a big room. It's good, comfortable. What else? do
Yeah,
you
I'm
need?
actually surprised. Not that this is about rooms, but the Excalibur. I'm in one of the.
It's part of the
refurbished
end of the
rooms.
show.
It's great.
It is.
It's a great room for $40
really?
a night.
How long are you going to be in the room?
Yeah.
Yeah,
As long as you got a bed to
I
sleep
mean,
on. and
I got
shower
in and
to
I had
take.
them change my room
Hopefully
because
shower.
all I could hear. I did. I hope
Yeah,
you guys did.
hopefully.
I mean, all I could hear was air conditioning units in the first room. I was like, "That's not going to work for a week staying in a hotel room. I'd like to sleep some while I'm in Vegas." So speaking of, obviously Vegas has a little bit more to offer when it comes to the night scene than what San Francisco gets. So you guys, most of you, I know where some of you were last night. So what are you looking forward to this week as far as events or things outside? I mean, I think a lot of people when it comes to VMworld don't realize how much more you get out of the networking outside of the sessions and this. So what are you looking forward to either that you've done or looking forward to this week?
I'll be honest. For me, it's why I come. I mean,
I don't come to the sessions.
I've signed up for 5 or 6 sessions. I'll probably make it to one.
I'm giving 2 of them. Those will probably be all I will be in.
Yeah, and I actually come to be part of the community. So I mean, from the community stuff, there's parties every night of the week. What's a little tough here is that some of them are really spread all over the place. At least like the vExpert party is down the other end of the town, other end of the strip.
You're not walking it.
You're not going to walk it, yeah. And so there's, the exercise factor. But for me, it really is about the community and hanging out places where I bump into you guys every night.
Yeah, it's same for me. I think I'm in 4 or 5 sessions, and there are 2 that I'll go to. I don't know that I went to any of them last year. I kind of do this thing. I like community. I like networking. But for me, it's not just hanging out with colleagues that you're now friends with. Seeing what they do. What do they do in their environment? How do you implement this? What new have you implemented? And maybe you can take that back to your environment.
So why don't you guys go to sessions then?
I do
wrong with
go
the
to sessions. I actually do go to sessions.
Yeah?
For a number of reasons. First, I'm here as a blogger, so I'm part of my sort of role at VMworld is to sort of show the rest of the world what's going on at VMworld, and a big part of it is for sessions. And I know the sessions are recorded, but how many people actually go home after a VMworld and go back and listen and record at the sessions?
I listened to 1 or 2.
There you go.
If that, yeah.
Having the focus being here, you can do questions, you can do group discussions are amazing because literally you're one-on-one with maybe an architect, a developer, a designer, a product person, and then you can literally ask questions from the people who are writing the software, and that's amazing. So I know it's easy to poo-poo the sessions to say, they're all recorded, you don't need to go to it. But when you have your focus on VMworld to be here, it's something in your calendar you can go to, it's a walk upstairs. It's definitely worth going to sessions. And we've all been doing this for a number of years, but there are still people new into virtualization, and they don't quite know how vCenter now works, and they don't know how NSX may plug in, or how vRealize sort of connects to the kind of thing. So, being in the community over here, there's definitely a bit of a bubble that you get into. But for the rest of the 20,000 attendees, this may be the first IT conference they've come to, and they're going to learn new stuff about VMware.
Absolutely. And going back to your point, Julian, it's interesting, some of the vMugs, when I do get a chance to make those now, it's kind of rare, but you'll still meet some people that they haven't even implemented virtualization in their environment.
Yeah, the number of VMugs that I go into, and you get 1 or 2 guys who are like, "Oh yeah, we're new to this. Is it okay if I virtualize Exchange or I virtualize my file server?" That's always like,
Right.
yeah, you'll be fine.
But I mean, that's on the extremes. But it may be, a simple example, somebody may be using a standard switch and is thinking of looking at a distributed switch. That's a small little kind of change. And this is the.
But it could be a big change for them.
Absolutely.
But a big change for them. Right.
Yeah.
So I've been talking, I think, with Julian a little bit and some other colleagues about VMworld as a whole. I mean, how do you see the conference? How it's migrating into something relevant,
Marketing?
not relevant kind of thing? I mean, is it
all
the
marketing? Is it?
Is it the cyclical thing that is virtualization and commodity now? It's not an ooh-ah factor thing necessarily. And I mean, let's be honest, vMotion is still like the shizzle. I mean, it's really cool still. But I mean, everybody does it. Well, people that use virtualization.
Well, I think.
So I mean, how are you guys viewing VMworld?
Yeah, that kind
as
of
a
rolls
whole?
into my next one that was on the product side of things. Are we seeing any major releases? Or are we just seeing new bundles? And is that having an impact on the show? I think
there was no major releases.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, great.
That
so
was
I
usually
can
a big
buy
thing at VMworld.
ESX, NSX, and vSAN all together. Okay.
As a vendor, I mean, you're a vendor too, so you know
Yeah.
how this stuff works. I mean, we try to wrap things around a big event because we want to have big news at an event, but development cycles aren't often based on when is your next big show.
Yeah,
so
no,
I kind of feel
it's
for
always
these guys.
challenging,
Everybody, and let's face it, we've been spoiled at VMworld for years that we come here and we just got blown away by technology, and they haven't been able to do that lately.
You're having a hard time innovating on a 6-month cycle. I mean, you just. And realistically, for a company as big as VMware at this point, for a release, they have to be done the release. To release in August, they better be pretty much done in June. It's not, I mean, so they're even shorter cycle on it.
It's a difficult thing to try and work around, and even in my own head, I need to pay my own way to come to VMworld, and I've got to keep thinking, is it worth the time and effort and money to come here, or is there something else? And I haven't found the sort of coalescing of our whole community, because even though VMware is a company with its own products, it's storage people and networking people and everybody kind of people over here. While I gather at Microsoft events and AWS from reInvent, it doesn't quite have that sort of mixing of everything. And so I think still VMworld is the focal point for the community and for people to get together, and I still think that is hugely important. From an announcement point of view, nothing grand, but I think what VMware is trying to do is, which they have to do, is this simplification thing. The foundation thing they've announced today is, okay, an installer of installers, so you can put all your stuff together, because this is the big problem with VMware technologies. They've got fantastic bits and pieces, but to actually link vRealize automation together, plus NSX, plus maybe vSAN, plus vSphere, plus updating certificates in your vCenter and all these kind of things is actually a pain in the butt. And if you're wanting to create that cloud system where people can literally go to Amazon or go to Azure and they can spin up a virtual machine like that, they're not worrying about all the infrastructure and all that kind of stuff.
I don't have to worry whether my single sign-on works.
Not exactly, and my token is broken, or I didn't redo the password or the certificates, or this kind of thing. And so the vision they were trying to outline today, I think, is we want to manage all your clouds for you. Whether that's going to be successful, I don't know, but we drastically need to simplify getting it up and running. Because it's hard. You're not going to spend weeks and weeks going through a whole deployment cycle literally just to get the basics up.
So with that though, VMware's built a heck of an ecosystem. I mean, we're mentioning how big the floor is. It's a huge ecosystem around it. But as they try to, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, are they eroding their ecosystem? And is it making a challenge for partners and vendors, you think, to be able to work in that system?
Well, we were talking about that yesterday as well. They keep buying and buying and buying and trying to compete with like AWS, and now Microsoft Azure is. I mean, I'm surprised at how well Microsoft has now become relevant again the past couple of years.
It's pretty amazing what they've done.
They're connecting Azure to everything.
Yeah, it's not easy to turn a ship that size, and they've definitely turned it over the last 3 years.
And it's very interesting, but that kind of goes back to my question about the relevance of VMworld. I totally agree with Julian. I think the community aspect of it is still there. Talking to our former lead guy, Mr. Troyer, last night. But our community is segregating out to these other areas, AWS, Name your other conference or avenues that are now starting to become relevant.
Microsoft,
I mean, what was that? AWS,
Azure or OpenStack,
You know.
stuff like that people are flowing into.
So
I think that's a maturation too of the community as a whole. Kind of was at a level in careers that the community we were all part of was at a career point, and then have kind of shifted where they were at in their careers too. So I think we're seeing different people, but not as much new community people.
I think we probably are. We just may not see it because we meet all up every kind of year and you don't necessarily see the new people coming in. I think there are lots of people still getting involved, but it's spread out. The ecosystem is massively fragmented. People doing from OpenStack to open source to containers and all this kind of thing, even though they tenuously linked in with VMware from an infrastructure provider point of view. That fragmentation of the industry is enormous. And the number of VMware people and Cisco and all the kind of people who are now working and running their own companies, from the ideas from VMware, it's far bigger. I mean, it's massive.
I think you guys are on a theme that I'm kind of looking at it from a slightly different angle, but kind of the same topic. And that is, we're talking about containers, we're talking about Azure, we're talking about AWS. I mean, all of these are threats to VMware.
Yeah.
And I think what we're seeing is VMware trying to embrace those where they can, and the stuff that they've done with containers and Proton and Photon and Proton, yeah. and today the announcements with Megatron was it?
easy. That was my tweet.
Nice.
And I think a lot of what is happening is, 5 years ago there was no competition. And everybody was just here as a total love fest. And VMware is now under a lot of pressure. And it's more, I think, for them trying to preserve what they've got and grow revenue, because there's a lot of pressure on them to grow revenue. And so, I think they're taking steps, like you said, to make things easier, because that's partly how you do it. But I'm kind of watching it from that standpoint of they're under a lot of pressure, and I think there's a lot of competitive stuff that is now happening that we never had to deal within this space, 5 years ago.
I think some of that's on them, some's on the market as a whole, the competition AWS is, but some of it, them buying Nicira, now you're competing with Cisco. Building vSAN, you're competing with all your storage
You're competing
partners.
with 34 vendors out on the show floor with
Right.
vSAN now.
Yeah, you see, I don't see a problem with that. I see VMware's vision of the software-defined data center, that they can provide the basics for you to get going. You need a compute stack, you need a storage stack, and you need a network stack. And to be honest, I think they are quite valid on taking on Cisco for that and taking on, the storage guys as well for vSAN. That's definitely a valid kind of thing. The problem is VMware is starting to be looked at as an expensive legacy IT vendor. And I know that's not true, and I know that's not entirely fair. And there will be a long tail of managing VMs for 10, 20 years.
Yeah, they're not going away.
Not in the slightest.
It's like the guys that say tape is going to disappear.
Yeah, but it is dwindling because people are looking at containers, people are looking at AWS and Azure. They're using it for that such simple to get going, and from a cost kind of thing. You can set up a virtual machine in AWS for nothing. It's going to cost you over time, but I don't know. I honestly don't know how VMware can or pivot to shift to be the sort of infrastructure provider for everything you want. And I think some of the keynote this morning was alluding to that, going, guys, because enterprises are going to land up with these new silos. So the previous silos were the storage team, the network team, and the database team. It's going to be the AWS team, the Azure team, and the vCloud Air team. That's going to be the future silos, where the teams are going to have no idea what each other's do. It's completely different technology. And if VMware can create this sort of portal that links them all together, and I like that. And if you've got a 3-tier application and you can map where it's all sitting, and in one dashboard, one's on AWS, one's on Azure, and one's on-prem, and you can see the network connections and the flows and those kind of things. That's what enterprises are going to want. So that's interesting. We'll have to see what works out.
So I was talking to Josh Atwell this morning, and he says to me...
Sorry, who?
Josh Atwell, that guy, ginger guy. And he tells me about this theory about his bubble. And if you take a circle, put a line at the top, a line at the bottom. Now you've got, the bottom is that SMB space, the top are the hyperscale guys, and the rest is that enterprise in the middle. Is that the market that you think we're seeing that
Yeah.
where it's going to be. So you think VMware's really finally trying to bite off that, how we're going to target that mid? Because you see like hyperconverged coming up from one side. You've got some of the more software-defined stuff coming down from the hyperscale side, I think.
Well, I still
They're
think
either going to surpass or meet in the middle.
I still think cloud is use case specific. I mean, I think it's a little bit more segregated out for smaller businesses. From a DR standpoint, I think it could be great, it could be cost beneficial. But generally speaking, in my opinion, cloud is still really big enterprise use case.
Do you feel that way with the automation stuff too?
No, I think automation is kind of global, but
So even the small guys should be using it, could be using it.
oh yeah, some form or another, yes, absolutely.
I think still VMware is pushing a legacy way of doing things, but for the right reasons, because the announcements today of a sort of DR as a service into vCloud Air. I mean, to do cloud properly, it's not using vSphere replication to migrate an on-prem VM into somewhere else. Or even though vMotioning across clouds sounds cool, that's not really what, the promise of cloud, how that's going to help you in microservices.
So what is it? What is it then? Because I saw you tweet that, and you got an answer. What?
I think apps are going to be rewritten far quicker than we think, and I don't think enterprises moving to the clouds are literally doing V2Vs of their on-premises VMs to somewhere else. They're going to be buying SaaS services, they're going to be using PaaS in a heavy way, and this whole taking a big, 3 terabytes Oracle database or something and moving it from your on-premises data center to a vCloud Air or somewhere else, I don't see that as cloud.
I think the challenge on these large ones too, and it has been for a while, it's not the sitting it there in the cloud. It's that cost of moving it in and out of the cloud. That cost for that data in and out is not changing just because you vMotion it into it.
Yeah,
Like I still not have to pay to move it all over there and move it all out.
And I do want to point out one thing Julian said on premise. I think if you rewind the podcast 10 seconds, he did say on premise. He corrected himself very quickly.
We can't have that.
So is it just more about flexibility to just be able to do it as opposed to actual use case in your environment?
Well, people don't want to build data centers. That's an expensive fact kind of thing. So I can see a use case, vCloud Air network or something. You're an enterprise and you want to do DR, but you don't want to manage a second data center. So there's a bit of DR stuff that is sort of cool and sexy for that. But I still think enterprises are going to stop consuming these shrink-wrapped applications. They're going to be very much going into a SaaS model, and that's going to delve deeper and deeper into enterprises that you don't think. I think we're going to be seeing, analytics and all this kind of thing running out of the cloud. So I take a bet that in any enterprise, 97 to 98% of the applications you run, everybody else runs. That it's only maybe the 3% that's your little secret sauce that makes your enterprise happy. Your training website, your HR system, your sales commissioning kind of thing. Everybody else is doing the same thing. SaaS it.
I think messaging has been one of the biggest, early things to see that. You look at it we used to always have to deploy locally. Whether it was Notes or Exchange, and now
I'm so happy for Office 365.
Office 365 and Gmail for enterprises. In all reality, there's not a lot of reason to deploy Exchange in-house anymore.
Don't tell that to Puma.
Well, but
that's exactly my point, and that's going to.
You're seeing that migration. I think it's becoming harder and harder. Unless you're a multi-thousand person company, maybe, because then the numbers do add up when you're doing the services. But at a couple hundred,
they still add up. HPE just went to Office 365. There's over 100,000 employees, and we just went to Office 365.
The numbers work at that point.
The numbers work.
The number of people, the hardware they had to keep, the refreshes on the hardware, even for a hardware vendor.
And in my mailbox went up 50x.
Yeah.
They're actually telling us don't use PSTs anymore. Just leave it all on the server.
Well, they just want to keep your data.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Okay. And yours and Hillary's.
More of that's gonna happen. Databases are going to be just running as a service in the cloud somewhere. Applications are, and so this whole move to cloud means vMotioning a VM or DRing a VM somewhere. I think if you were an enterprise architect doing cloud, you want to get rid of all that stuff.
So we got maybe just a couple more minutes, and we'll wrap up. Try to keep it about a half hour as normal on it. So we've got now, today's Monday, we got 3 more days-ish, 4 days, depending on when everybody's leaving on it. For the people here or the people that are kind of paying attention online and home, what should they be? What is the one thing you think they should be watching out for? Go with each of you.
My opinion, I still think, Calvin mentioned it, storage, what's changing in storage. And Josh, if you're listening, don't turn it off for a second, the hyperconverged infrastructure, HCI. I mean, I still think that's interesting. And I'm personally, I like Veeam, so I like 9.5, and I want to go see some demos of what they got going on with their new
They have one
new
of
release.
definitely one of the largest, most just
Right.
like beastly booths in
And
the,
they're just
like
a good
you walk in, you're
culture
like, there's
and
just a
stuff.
lot.
Right. So those are the 3 things for me that I'm looking out for.
Yeah, well, as a storage guy, I just got a dogpile on the storage part of it. I think what will be interesting, HCI is certainly a relevant conversation. What's coming after that? HCI is still kind of very focused on certain areas, certain use cases. A lot of debate in yesterday's opening acts about HCI, and a lot of disagreement, and what's the relevance. So, to me, this is like the most turbulent time I think I have ever seen in IT. Having worked in this industry over 30 years, this has got to be the most turbulent period of time I've ever seen.
Well, and that reckoning you mentioned in the beginning, we are going to see that blend of companies, I think. And the question is, are some of the big companies just kind of waiting it out because they know that some of these small guys aren't going to make it, so they can just keep biting at their ankles for a little while, but eventually they'll go away.
HCI, I think, is literally going to take over the world. I would reckon probably 70 to 80% of workloads in an enterprise should just go to HCI. The time of curating hardware and software and firmware and drivers and everything, like really absolute waste of time. Just use, even if you roll your own or with HP servers or IBM servers or in Nutanix or SimpliVity or that kind of thing, save yourself the time and hassle and just go HCI. That's from an infrastructure point of view. And then you've got to look at the next stage and go, once you sorted that out and made that so simple, you have to embrace the DevOps movement with your developers who are developing kind of stuff. And your developers are now using Docker containers, are using continuous integration, continuous deployment, and they expect to be able to set up virtual machines, set up containers in minutes/seconds. And you need to reach out to them and have an infrastructure that can provide that, and grow up a bit and not be so protective of your little vSphere environments, and be able to manage vSphere as your soft layer vSphere on premises, and all of that. But the developers are the guys who are expecting an API-driven workload, and your infrastructure needs to deliver that. So you need to be looking at that.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys again for joining me. It's always fun to get some time in as the day goes on. We'll be back tomorrow and the day after for some more of vExpert Daily. So thanks for joining us. Make sure you pay attention to the rest of the Brownbag sessions coming out throughout the rest of the day, and enjoy the show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.